doing TED Talks and radio hosts, advocating for the MAP people, the MAPs of the world, the pedos, who are claiming that these people were born this way, just like the gays. So now it's a slippery slope. Now I feel divided. I mean, on one hand, I agree that it's not a simple matter of choice, and that aspects of sexual orientation are present, very early in life. Some so-called scholars would suggest that even possibly before birth. I think sexual orientation. I won't argue against the idea that sexual orientation is influenced by, biology, genetics, hormones, environment, social factors, right? Depending on how religious you are, some folks might believe in reincarnation, and if you were gay in a previous life, you might be inclined to be gay in your new life, right? Not trying to be funny.
Or maybe you try to mix it up the next time.
Exactly, right? So I think there's a lot of, there's a complex interplay here. I won't say that it is a choice 100% of the time, but now that we're, evolving as humans, and you have people saying, well, pedos were born this way. So then the question becomes, well, if pedos were born this way and gays were born this way, were serial killers born this way too? So, and I wouldn't have adopted this ideology, again, maybe 5-10 years ago. But as our social conversations are changing, it's making me think, like, okay, where do we draw the line when it comes to sexual orientation? Is it a matter of choice, or are you born this way? So I almost feel divided, to be honest with you.
You know what's interesting, Roger? This is like the pre-modern. Well, there's lots of pre-modern. I wonder what Caleb, because there's multiple genders I know, right? In rabbinic thought, right? So, which I'm sure Caleb can comment on. But Aristophanes, in Plato's Republic, yes, the playwright Aristophanes talk about like this concept of soulmates, right? That human beings were originally made of like 4 arms, 4 legs, like so. Zeus divided their souls, right? And so when your soul falls to heaven, you're actually looking for your soulmate, like and they were like male and female halves. And then Aristophanes sort of like theorizes, I think so. And maybe it's in the Symposium. Sorry, it's not in the book. It's in the Symposium, I think. That some people that have this kind of congenital attraction to the same sex, their halves were actually with this person of the same sex, right? Generally, they're talking about guys, generally in the Symposium, but that their soul is not male-female, but male-male, so that's why they're looking for male sexual union. So, I don't know. Not that that's very scientific or anything. It's, Aristophanes.
The title, I do not think it's term by birth. I think that I saw a study done by, I think it was like the Archives of Sexual Behavior in like the early 2000s, showed that 40% of gay men experienced sexual abuse in childhood compared to 10% in heterosexual men. And then on top of that, I also saw, like, I think it was like I forget, like, I'm pretty sure like that number has pretty much been consistent since that early 2000. And then the other thing that I think about is that you guys remember the Alex Jones, They're Turning the Frogs Gay, which is like it's a funny meme, but it's also true, like that, I forget, what was it called, like, was it like, I forget, like the chemical in the water that was actually, it took, because what they actually did was they took African, like, claw frogs, or whatever they're called, and they studied, through the EPA did this as well, showed that in high doses of concentration in this water supply would turn the sex of these male African frogs and make them super effeminate. And that type of chemicals in our drinking water to this day. So I also wonder, like, does that play a portion? I think a lot of, I think a lot of environmental factors, of course, how you grow up. But I think sexual abuse as a child, and I think, possible chemicals in different functionalities in our human life could potentially determine your, the course of your, I guess, sexual orientation. So no, there's no gay gene. So
Well, whether there is a gay gene or isn't a gay gene, I think that when it comes to sexual orientation, there's going to be things that influence this stuff. What you're attracted to. I always thought it was interesting where, if you think about the way that men, have their intimate moments when they're homosexual, it's an act, whether oral or anal. It's an act that they could have done heterosexually. So it's not the act itself that they're drawn to. It seems to be they're drawn to. It could be just that person. There's something about that person they're drawn to, or it could be the fact that they're just attracted to their same sex. And I don't fully understand it. So this is one of those rooms where you're not going to get a lot of answers or hard opinions from me. I think the biggest point is that I would say that even if it's a lifestyle that you wouldn't participate in, maybe even perhaps you'd go as far as to say it's repugnant, I definitely think it's something that we should talk about, also weaving into this conversation, protecting the rights for people to freely, participate in whatever consensual adult sexual relations they would choose. But I don't want to get too far off topic there. Caleb, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think I'm mostly with the group. I think it's probably a combination of things in terms of the absolute answer to the question. Why does the question matter? Well, you just sort of mentioned it matters socially. It matters policy-wise, morally, especially in the world of identitarian politics, where people want to say, I am this thing, and you can't take away my amness, my isness of that thing. So protection of rights, access to all kinds of things, inclusion, diversity, whatever you want to say, right? In the world of that, I think there's probably motivations to say, whichever side of that conversation you're on, it strikes me that there's probably motivations for you to want to say that it's a sign that it's designated at birth, and probably those who are motivated to say that it isn't, for the social implication of it all.
Yeah, I think that's good. Sarah, you came off mic. You want to jump in?
I just was going to say, now that we're protecting everybody's right, can we open the chat and protect our chatters' right?
The chat has been liberated.
You can all now occupy the chat.
yeah, and I do agree with Caleb that without a doubt, this if I'm against homosexuality and I think it's pretty gay, then yeah, I'm gonna think that's not determined at birth. And if you are for homosexuality and you think it's pretty cool, then yeah, you're gonna be like, oh no, it is determined at birth. But I think there is more statistics backing up that's probably not determined at birth. It's probably way more environmental. I guess until they figure out what gene causes it, or what hormonal change shifts at birth causes it. But it kind of like what Mojo was saying, or Roger was saying, I don't know what he's going by right now, but which is that think about it, it kind of makes sense if you're sexually abused as a child. It's really, really sad that, I'm not trying to take away from what actually happens, but your first ever sexual interaction is with a man, right? And then after that, and let's say even made you feel good as a child, which is again very, very bad since that's a real thing, and children get exposed and exploited. But again, that's your first ever sexual interaction. You might always crave that sexual interaction for the rest of your life, and so I feel like that is a really big determining factor. As a child, is what you are predisposed to before you're an consenting adult. Even maybe pornography. What if your ever first porn is gay? will you then just be attracted? Like, I don't know. But,
so can I ask you a question? Do you think that the answer to the when it's determined makes any difference about protection of rights?
Not when it's determined. But do I think that they deserve like the same rights as everyone?
Like everybody deserves all the same rights, right?
No, I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe that? Okay.
No, like I don't believe like they should like adopt children.
You don't think gay people should have the rights to be parents?
No.
Okay, so you're a bigot. Great.
Roger, I'm wondering. I have a question for you politically. Do you think that Pete Buttigieg would have better political prospects if he came out as a non-versatile top?
I think there's a lot of things that go into people's preference of who they would elect. I think that there's probably sexual orientations that in a particular area of the country, maybe even just your neighborhood or your county, that people would weight that very heavily. I can also see, choosing to vote against somebody that happens to be homosexual, but it has nothing to do with their sexuality. For example, Buttigieg. I would never vote for him. I wouldn't vote for him to be dog catcher. But my reason for that is I don't like his position on when it comes to gun rights. And so, but I think a lot of people, if he were to come out and say, hey, I would never vote for that guy, I think he would be awful. Even if you didn't mention sexual orientation, much like the race and gender thing, people would say, oh, you're probably against that. But before we get too deep into that, I want to interrogate this thing that Keegan had said. Keegan said that he doesn't believe that if you're homosexual, that you should have rights to adopt. And I'm just kind of curious, like, why would you, like, what is your reason for that?
Yeah, I think that number one is if they were adopting older kids in the foster care system, I maybe could be like, hey, maybe I don't think it's ethical, but like those kids are better off probably in a gay household than in foster care, right? But what actually is tend to happen is that they have they get priority over heterosexual parents for newborn adoption, and we don't have a problem in America. We don't have a problem with newborns being adopted. So I don't believe that newborns. I think newborns have the right to a heterosexual household. Maybe I would almost say that maybe I would be okay with it if we gave priority to heterosexual couples first, and if there's any newborns left, then they could maybe. But again, I also think that number one is I think you have a right to a heterosexual couple because a father and a mother. And also I have the same opinion for single parents. Single parents shouldn't adopt either. Shouldn't be allowed to adopt either. But as a parent myself, I've read a lot of parenting books, and they've done so many studies of how fathers and mothers parent completely differently. Fathers are much more risk takers. They do actually rough and tumble play, as they call it, and they allow.
Are you talking about Jordan Peterson's take on this?
No, not Jordan. This is a book.
Because that's the exact term that he refers to when he talks about this.
Well, he must be reading off the study. It's a study done in 2021, which it's called the RTP study, which is called the Rough and Tumble Physical Play Study, which I'm guessing I bet he's just referring to. Which I bet a lot of parenting books refer to it because it's supposed to share what a father should do and what a mother should do. But they've done studies on how fathers are much more risk takers, right? They allow their children to really experiment what they're able to do with their bodies as children, while mothers tend to be much more compassionate. They tend to teach their children about emotional awareness. Actually, they show that communication styles, when a mother teaches their kids majority of the communication styles for the first 12 months, they tend to have much better communication styles than if the father taught the child for the first 12 months, right? So I think that these things, I mean, biologically, we were made to have children heterosexually, and I think that there's also biologically a course of how those children are supposed to be raised biologically. If we change that course, just because of preference. It's just not what I agree with. I think it's unethical.
Well, but you didn't. You gave me a lot of information, but you didn't answer the question. Like, what is your reasoning for why you think this is bad? I mean,
They don't make good parents. They can't be good parents because
they can't be.
They're not opposite sex. They only can bring one aspect of parenting to the child. Is my point.
Can I ask?
If two fathers.
You could ask a question, but it better be on this particular thread.
Exactly on this. That he says they won't see one type of parent. But does that mean we're gonna like ban people, single parents? Because if you're raised by a single parent, you're only seeing one type of parenting too. If your parent is one of your parents die, it's the same thing. You only see one type of parent.
Yeah. As I stated before, number one is, again, this is about adoption. This is about the choice to put a child into a home that isn't, again, the natural way of having a child, which is through a heterosexual couple. So if a single parent wanted to adopt, I can't make people not divorce or a widow happen. I can't determine that. But what we can determine is when children get adopted and who they get adopted by. But a single parent shouldn't be.
But we can't control. As a society, we can't control when heterosexual people that don't love each other decide to have sex. A pregnancy occurs, a child is born, and then you have two people that may or may not be in a relationship, and then so now you have like a single mother. You could have a father that doesn't want to be involved. I would make the argument. This is the very, very minimum argument that I think in terms of parenting and what would make a good parent would start with a few basic things. Like, number one, are you committed to raising the child? Because there's people that are heterosexual that are not committed to doing that. That becomes problematic.